Good afternoon. Welcome to this session on empowering enterprise mobility. This is the first part. There will be a second part. Not right after this one, but there will be one later this afternoon. In the first part here, I will be focusing on some of the things that I have encountered and learned during some of our first EMS projects that we have done. For those of you who are unfamiliar with EMS, that's perfectly okay, because it's not a brand new product, because it's not a product, but it's a couple of rather new services that are, I wouldn't say they are complete, because I do not believe that they will never ever complete in the sense that we will have, like a ready build like we knew in the old days, because these year, changes are coming all the time. And because changes are coming all the time, to be honest, I don't really care about a specific feature, because if that specific feature is not in the product yet, it very well be, 2 months from now. What I kind of care about is how do we set this up correctly, and more important, who should set this up, and that's more or less what the first part is all about. My name is Kent. I'm from Copenhagen in Denmark, and I work with enterprise client management. Been doing that for most of my IT career. I started out as a database developer. That was a long time ago, back when we were actually developing printer drivers. We're not doing that any longer, and that's pretty good. I work for Cortec Global, and as I said, I spent most of my time as a consultant. I also do training and also write a couple of books. And if my publisher would like to speed the process up a little bit, then I will have a book out on EMS very, very shortly. So the first thing that comes into my mind when I'm talking to a customer about EMS is the data ecosystem. If I go into a customer and it's the IT pro guy calling me, he or she will first focus on how do we get these Android devices enrolled, and I go like, I don't know. Well, I do know, but I do not care. At this point in the project, I do not care, because it's not about enrolling your devices. What you need to do is you first need to figure out what's important. And what's important for you is most likely your data. And by the way, I really enjoy this conversation, but we should get someone to join the conversation from the C-level, because EMS is not, me as an IT pro talking to you as an IT pro. We need to get some of the finer ladies and gentlemen from the company to take part of this, because they need to own this project. Otherwise, it will most likely be a failure. So the things that we will go through in the beginning is kind of defining the data ecosystem at the customer. So who is accessing your data? Do you know that today? It might seem like a stupid question, but if Nikolai here is mailing me a PowerPoint deck, do he know what I'm going to do about that? Probably not. Can he trace it? Probably not. So he has absolutely no control of who's accessing those data. So that we need to figure out. We need to figure out if we have customers, employees, what kind of employees, if we have any, competitors maybe. I've been called into a project, and the main driver for that one was because they knew their competitors had access to some of the spreadsheets. How they got access to those spreadsheets, they have no idea, but they just knew they had them. So defining who has access and who should have access, it's not the same, but defining who should have access to your data is kind of very important here if you want to, become successful. How do you get access? That's another one, and that's where a lot of us we're focusing our job on. We're like, hey, I can install Office now. I can read my Word files. That's pretty neat. But what if I'm not in the company? What if I'm somewhere else? Should I still be able to get access to all data? Or should we have some kind of, dynamic rules that will figure out where you are and then based on that, grant you access to some of the data? That's kind of interesting. And from where do you get access? That's the intranet, extranet, the airport. If I'm in this location in the building, can I still get access to what we are working with in the other room? And then the age. Funny enough, I'm beginning to worry about the age. I didn't do that 5 years ago, but I'm also worried about the documents that I send out, because when I send out a document, is the information we have in that document, are they valid forever? Or will they at one point, come back and haunt me? And a classic example is that someone is sending out, an offer to a customer, and this sales guy here is on a commission, so he's like, and it's the end of the month, he needs the deal, right? Sends out the offer, and the prices are just so wrong. But that offer exists out there, and the customer can come back to you a year later and say, hey, I see you're giving me some new prices. They're like 40% more expensive. Please go ahead and explain. And you're just sitting there. You put yourself into a bad position. So defining the data ecosystem, figuring out exactly what it is you would like to protect from who, and also how you would like to grant the right people access. That is more or less what EMS is all about. Around this, we have a ton of different technologies. So for the age, we have Azure Rights Management, right? We have Intune to define from how you can get access, so you can deploy the right apps and so on and so forth. Who we can go in and define claims in our web application proxy, so we can create some XML rules in there. We have a ton of technology that will support this, but starting the discussion with a technology discussion, that is wrong. That's also why you need to have someone from the C-level, from upper management, to take part of this, because he or she needs to become the owner of the project. Then you need a demo environment. And the demo environment, if you're deploying Windows 10, super easy, right? You get an MDT, you have a Windows 10, and that's it. But here, in the environment that I'm working with, I have 3 different areas. I have my intranet. In my intranet, I have my Active Directory Federation services. So when users are requesting access, they will actually be sent back to my on-premise environment. They will get a token, and then they will use that token whenever they need to use that one. I also have Configuration Manager, because if I walk into a customer and they already have Config Manager, I'm most likely going to tell them, hey, you should stick with that hybrid solution. There's no reason why you should have 2 different management platforms. Plus, I kind of know Config Manager, so for me it's like, having dinner with an old friend. It's just easier that way. Then I have my web application proxy. I have that in my DMC environment. So that is where we can go in and create our claims and place our rules and say, hey, all based on these conditions, you will be offered access to this. There is a session tomorrow. I just noticed that because I've signed up for that, only around web application proxy. So I highly encourage you to attend to that one. And then in the cloud, we will have Azure. We will have Intune, and we'll also most likely need an Office 365 subscription. Now, this is a demo environment. When you're building a demo environment, and if you subscribe to these services, you will know that these services, when you subscribe to them, if you pay, then they're happy. But if you're setting up a demo environment, you probably, you want to do a trial license. And it gives you like 30 days. Give and take. It depends on the different services that you have. But before you start making those subscriptions, make sure that you have planned everything. Otherwise, you can easily end up, wasting a couple of days creating the wrong subscriptions, and then you have to go all back again. So some of the accounts that you need an Apple ID. It should never ever be your Apple ID, especially not in a project, because seriously. That is just a bad idea. one of the reasons why you want to have an Apple ID is because when you're creating the Apple push notification certificate, you will sign in, and the person who signs in will also be the person who will receive an email about a year from now from Apple saying, hey, your cert is about to expire. That will happen a good 20 days before the certificate will expire, but if you do not go in and renew that, then you have to re-enroll all of your iOS devices again. And that's not fun. So I mean, if you just, start in here, you don't think, you don't plan, then you end up in scenarios like that. And this actually happened for a customer of mine Monday. And it's not because they didn't use their own Apple ID and stuff like that, but the mail from Apple was caught in the spam filter, so they never got it. That's like, ouch. So maybe, you want to do something in your own calendar and in your colleague's calendar, because you don't want to end up in a scenario where you have to re-enroll 3,000 Apple devices. Trust me, it's not that fun. So my environment looks a little like this, or it looks like this. This is the demo environment I've built in here. So you'll see I have ADFS. I have CMO1, which is my config manager server. I have, of course, a domain controller. I have Indes. So I have Indes in order for me to deploy my certificates. So if you have Wi-Fi profile that requires that you have certificates as part of your authentication, we need to get those certs out there somehow. If you're using an on-premise solution, well, here it is. You need to have Indes on-premise. And then I have my web application proxy. So building the environment takes a little, it's just a little more effort than we normally are used to. When you sign up for these, make sure you sign up for them, about the same day, so one doesn't expire, 2 days or 4 weeks before the other one, because then you just have to call Microsoft. They are very friendly, so they will most likely extend your license or your trial account. I've done that. My record so far is, I think, 4 months. Just rehearse your story. Something with a broken leg and a hospital visit and something like that. Okay, so what we have learned is when we go in here, we need to, as I said, we need to not look at the technology. We need to first secure a sponsor. If this has to become a success, the customer has to realize that this is actually important. Because what happens if you lose your data? Or what happens if someone else is getting access to your data? So a good sponsor is important because that sponsor will allocate resources. And they will also, we need to make some tough decisions, because you've given all of your colleagues an iPhone. And they're happy because now they can play all their stuff. Now you have to lock it down. That will not make them happy, trust me, because it's their phone, even though you paid for it. So you need to have a sponsor. You need to have someone with enough stars on the shoulders to go in and say, this is how it is. So then you need to define your starting point. And especially with EMS, I have never ever seen a single consultant go in and successfully implement the entire EMS suite. And now we're not talking about implementing it in a lab environment or implementing it so it might work from a technology view. This is you need to define all the business needs. See, so why are we doing this? What are we trying to achieve in here? And then you can start defining some milestones. But don't expect that this is done, even though it might be cloud services. This is not done in a week, because you need Indes. You need to look at your existing PKI infrastructure, and if you have an existing PKI infrastructure, that can easily be weeks only looking at that. Then you might be federating with a lot of external resources, or you might want to do that in the future. There are a ton of projects in here. So you need to define your starting points, you need to define your goals and your milestones. And then, as I mentioned, Set up a test environment. When you set up a test environment, forget about, that's my personal opinion, forget about all the, you can install an Android emulator and a Windows Phone emulator and stuff like that. Forget about that. You're going to be so frustrated. Get some real devices. And it's not that hard to get a device. You just go, to your mom, pick up her phone, and then you do like this. Oh, Mom, your screen is broken. You need a new one. Can I take the old one? Done that once, and I had to pay for her device. So that was a very bad idea. So when you set up your test environment, you might want to, all depending on your own organization, you might want to have to set up two different. Because there is stuff that is working in Intune standalone, and there is stuff that is working differently when you have a hybrid environment. And you need to make that decision very, very, very soon in the project. Okay, assemble the right team. If I walk into a customer and they say, we need Intune, or we need MDM, or we need EMS, or whatever. And I'll say, okay, so do you have any cloud identity already? And they go, no, but we have seen, you can install Azure Active Directory Connect, and you can set up ADFS and everything in one go in one wizard. I'm like, I'm out of here. You didn't call me in to set up Active Directory when you asked for me to, to configure SCCM, right? You already had Active Directory, you already had your on-premise identity in place, and you have a different team controlling that on-premise identity. It's the same here. Especially in enterprise organizations, I've been waiting 3 weeks because someone else in another country already went in, like a cowboy, and just registered some domain names. So we couldn't continue, because once those are registered, you need signatures, you need passports, you need a ton of stuff to make those changes. So assemble the correct team. Don't think you can do all of this yourself. If you can, you're Superman. You're awesome. But unless you're an expert in PKI and identity and all of that, make sure you step your foot down and say, okay, I really want to do this, but you really need to make sure your PKI is working. And I do not believe that it's working right now. And it feels like, you easily feel a little dumb when you go in and say, yeah, I want to do that, but I cannot do that and I cannot do that. But trust me, they will respect you for that. So the right identity solution, we need a cloud identity. You could be all cloud. Would I do that? Yeah, maybe if I'm setting up a smaller shop today and we don't have anything, that would be super easy. I don't have to worry about that. We can do a synchronized identity where you have like ADFS and you're synchronizing your password. That's kind of fine. You can have a federated identity, which most of us will have today with ADFS. So we still do our authentication on-prem, and then we just get the token. When you do a federated identity, a big mistake I've seen a lot of organizations do is that they set up ADFS, they don't monitor ADFS. And I've been called out to the same customer twice to troubleshoot MDM enrollments, spending a ton of time looking, first I go into Intune, figure out if something is wrong, everything looks good, and then it's just the ADFS, because they're not monitoring that service. So you definitely, you want to monitor that. Then you need to figure out how well do you trust your employees. And that's not an easy choice to make. But we need to figure out if we are a kind of organization where we have a high trust and we have a high freedom and everybody can just, bring their own devices, and we really don't care about that. Because if that's the case and you don't even want them to enroll, then we can still grant them access to applications. That was one of the new features that was released a couple of months ago. But if you really want to lock everything down, and you do want to do that, then we have to look at some of the lockdown features in Apple. We need to get Apple configurator in place. We need to get someone who knows something about iOS. So this is super interesting when you're doing all the planning, because we didn't expect this. We just expected, to set up Intune and get started, and then that's it. The enrollment options. So again, this is very tight connected to the freedom and stuff like that. But are we now, when we are starting to enroll Windows 10? I have a Windows 10 session tomorrow morning, and in there we are going to support 3 different ways of managing Windows 10. So you have Azure AD. You can enroll it into Azure AD. Once you do that, you can configure your Intune application to automatically become enrolled. So once you enroll it to the Azure AD, it just becomes part of Intune like almost instantly. You can also do an on-prem MDM enrollment. So if you have Config Manager 1511, those of you who just attended Wally's session, I'm pretty sure he mentioned that. In there, you can have in the Configuration Manager manage your Windows 10 device without installing a Config Manager client and without installing an Intune client. So there might be good reasons for you to have that. The thing is, it's not any longer just one management option, and there is no management option that is right for a single organization. You will have to pick and choose between the different ones. Data protection. This is really why we are here. I mean, that's the only reason why I want to talk EMS in the first place. So I mean, how are we going to protect the data? Has to be as easy as possible. Some of you might have been looking into enterprise data protection. That's a Windows 10 feature, and we can control it eventually within Configuration Manager, one of the upcoming builds, hopefully. But that is like super interesting. We can't really do it, fully today, but that is a conversation I would love to take with my customers because it requires planning. Just like all of this will require planning, it might even take. The last customer was out there like, yeah, sounds good. There's no way we can plan this. It's going to take us at least 6 to 12 months to turn the business around, so we change our processes and all of that. And finally, work from anywhere. Start by defining anywhere. It's like when we walk in and someone say, hey, we want to be 100% compliant. I'm like, okay, what's 100%? I mean, if you cannot tell me, then there is no way I can guarantee you will ever become 100% compliant. So what is anywhere? And then they say, yeah, well, that's anywhere. And then you say, okay, is it also here? No. Is it here? No. Okay. So it might not be anywhere, right? And then make your applications mobile and make sure that they are manageable. So this is now you get the device. What about all your apps? What about the vendor apps that we are using? What if you're replacing, a traditional laptop with an iPad in here? Do you know if we can still, access the data that we want to access? So these are all the questions we have to go through in the beginning. And at the end of the day, it's all, just about apps, devices, and data, and making sure that everything is available. So. To me, that is EMS. And as I said, EMS is not a single product. It's several cloud services, but those cloud services are built on top of all of your internal processes around the data ecosystem. So we are going to have a look at Azure Active Directory Premium. We will save Intune and mobile device management because that is by far the biggest chunk. So we'll save that till the second session. Azure Rights Management, and then the new kid on the block, the Advanced Threat Analytics, which stands out a little bit because it's not really a cloud service. I still do not understand how it fits in here, but it's a great product nevertheless. So Azure Active Directory, it comes in several flavors. The one that you really want to play around with, the one that is included in your license, is Premium. So with Premium, I'm not going to read this, but with Premium, you're getting self-service password reset. That alone can sell some of your projects. You're getting MFA. That's something most of us are already using. So we already have, a secure RSA token or something like that. It would be kind of nice if we could get rid of that and then use, our phone or something else. But just get rid of an additional cost in the organization. Those are the two biggest advantages that I see when we implement EMS and when we only talk Azure Active Directory. That's what our customers want to hear about. Let's go in and have, because I'm not going to talk, it was only in the beginning here I was talking this much. Normally I don't talk that much at all. Don't trust me. So, for those of you who have never seen Azure Active Directory before, I just logged into my windowsazure.com and I'm logged in as the global administrator because that's the account that I have. Here I have my directory, so this is via Monstra. And you'll see in via Monstra, I have already enabled synchronization, so I'm synchronizing my resources. And mistake number one, that is install Azure Active Directory Connect and synchronize the entire directory. You don't want to do that, and a ton of people have done that in the past. That's why you don't want to rush into this. So figure out who are your cloud-based users and only synchronize those. I'm not like a huge fan of this environment. I can go in and I can manage my users. I can reset a password and so on. I can see the activity and the devices that they're using. But if I really want to work with them, I would get my MS Online commandlets installed. So I would use PowerShell instead. Maybe build a UI or something like that, because this is not that easy to work with once you have several thousand objects in here. The easiest way for me to see if I actually have the premium edition is to go and look at my reports. So if I have like a ton of reports that will give me information about sign in from various locations and suspicious logon information and so on and so forth, then I have the premium edition. Okay. Configure. That is the first one you want to look at. So once we have synchronized the users and so on, go in and have a look at configure. When you look at configure and you scroll down and you check all the different options, make sure you do it again next Monday, because this one here is not like your on-premise thing. So there will be a ton of new options, not every Monday, right? But once in a while there will be something in here called preview, and you go in like, oh, I've never seen that before, and then you feel like, hey, I want to play around with that, and now you just need to realize, are we in a demo environment or are we in the production environment? Because if you start playing around with something in a production environment, I can tell you all of a sudden, all of your users that just happened to us, they don't have access to Azure Rights Management any longer. That's not fun. Not when you have 1,200 users or something like that, and it was just because one was in here and playing around. You don't want that. For my PowerShell, I've just done a few examples in here. So get familiar with PowerShell. There are some really, really good examples online. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to connect to my online service. Already done that, so you didn't have to watch me punch in my password and so on and so forth. So I can start doing some of the basic stuff, like say, hey, I want to see all of my users. Once I see all of my users, I can start seeing different properties. I can start figuring out who is actually MFA enabled and so on and so forth. I can start playing around with these. Some other very basic things in here is just do the same and then have a look at all my groups. You'll notice here when I look at my groups that I have an object ID. So when I want to manipulate with this group here, the object ID is what I will take. So I'll just take a copy of my object ID here. And then the next line I have is, please show me all the members I have in this specific group, and it's going to list all the members that I have. I'm not saying that, and some will probably argue with that go in and type PowerShell is easier than working in the UI, but you will probably at one point you will have to build a ton of different PowerShell scripts, so you can quickly enable a thing, you can quickly disable a thing, so you don't have to go into the UI and do all of that stuff. And by the way, if you have any questions along the way, just stop me. So MFA, why do we want to have multi-factor authentication? The thing is, we probably already have it. If you don't have it, you might want to read articles around pass the hash, or you might want to, attend some of the security sessions that we have here, because they are pretty good, but also extremely scary at the same time. So once you've attended them, it takes two to really, be secure. A password, even though it travels encrypted on the network and so on, and even though the password itself, but it's a hash that travels on the network, they are not really that secure. So it takes two for us to get some kind of security in here. Then when you realize, okay, we want to have multi-factor authentication, then the next question is like, why? Well, security instructs us to do so. Okay, cool. So what services and networks and apps and so on do you want to exclude? Who do you want to include in the beginning? Who's part of the pilot? What methods do you want? We can have a nice lady calling us from Microsoft. That's fun the first time, trust me. Might be fun when you're doing a demo, but it's definitely not fun in the real world. It's kind of annoying. You can also have a text. That works also. I have different other MFA solutions that I'm using. So when I have my Azure, when I have my Symantec, it's using an authentication app instead. And my Azure Authenticator is exactly the same. So that's an app that I will install on my device, and then I'll just get a request on my device, and I will just say, approve, this is me, I'm logging in right now. So let's just take a close look at that. And by the way, one of the blog posts, and I'll make sure I post the links in here, but one of the blog posts is like really good because it contains a lot of other links if you want to read about pass the hash and why you want to implement this. This is the one. It's pretty good. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to configure. And when you go to configure, this is where you go in, and configure the different settings. And one thing you'll realize in here is when you get to multi-factor authentication, this is it. So manage your service settings. So I'll go ahead and manage my service settings. This is where I would go in once I'm authenticated. This is where I will go in and exclude my own IP ranges. So where do you not want this, to have any effect? And that's why I'm saying we need to plan this, because it's not like you just set up .exe and then it's all done. So there are a couple of things in here that you want to plan. You also need to go in and tell. So what users in here do you want to enable MFA for? And this is where, if I have like 1,000 users or 2,000 users or 20,000 users, the interface here really quickly comes to, it's not that intuitive in my opinion here. It works, but for stuff like that, you probably want to again turn to PowerShell. So there are these PowerShell commandlets here. There are the same PowerShell scripts that I kind of use over and over and over again. So here I will just go in and figure out what are the current settings for Henrik. So if Henrik doesn't have MFA enabled, you'll see it down here. It doesn't say anything at all. I can go in and then I can enable MFA for Henrik. Just want to make sure I have Henrik in here. There you go. Let me just show you what it looks like when it is enabled. So you can quickly see in here, much quicker than signing into a portal and finding the user and so on and so forth. So this is something you definitely want to do when you're troubleshooting, because there can be times where you have to disable MFA. MFA, that has happened to me for my own account a couple of times. All of a sudden I couldn't log in. I had to disable MFA, then I could log in, and then we could enable it again. I have no idea why, but it was just like that. So if I'm Henrik, then once MFA has been enabled, I can go to one of the cloud services, and you'll notice I'm using Google Chrome, I'm using Edge, I'm using private browsing, I'm using IE, and that's another thing. When you start testing all of this, you'll be logged in with cache credentials so many different times, so you'll start troubleshooting and you go like, oh, what's wrong? And then it's just the browser that you're using. So when I go in here as Henrik, sign in, and it will tell me that, you know what, your admin has required that you use an additional verification method. I can set it up. The admin in Azure Active Directory has already set so what kind of authentication message validations can you use. So in here I can use a mobile app. That would be my Azure Authenticator. I can use my office phone. I can use my normal authentication phone. So if I just use my normal authentication phone in here, this is the only example where I want to use this. As I said, it's fun for demos. Absolutely nothing else. It's only fun if it's actually calling, right?
Microsoft sign-in verification system. Please press the pound key to finish your verification. Your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
Goodbye. And if you don't remember to pick up the phone, she will actually leave the same message on your answering machine. So I have like 25 of those. Okay, so now I have been configuring my my MFA in here, and I have access my apps in here. This is like my my playground in here. I can see what groups I belong to, what applications I have, and so on and so forth. I can also go in here and I can go in and configure as the end user, some additional verification methods again if I want to do that. So, and of course, if you want to do all of this, you can also go ahead and disable it for that specific user again. MFA can also be enabled for certain applications. It can also be enabled for administrators. It can also be enabled when I'm logging in or when I'm enrolling a device. So it's not like you have MFA or you don't have MFA. You need to figure out where you want to use MFA and where it actually fits into your environment. Password reset. This is like a dumb question, because the password feature you have, I take it that most of you have an on-premise Active Directory. Yeah, I've not met one in many, many years who do not have AD. There is a feature in there where you have a user, you can create a user account, and you can actually also set a password, right? And then the question is a password free? Is that a feature you have to pay for? Of course, it's not a feature you have to pay for, but a lot of us, none of you in the room, but some of us, normal users, we tend to forget our passwords, just once in a while. And when you start reading a lot of different studies on the web, and they're not just coming from Microsoft, they are all different studies, then you realize that someone has actually, measured the amount of money that it cost a company. One of the studies was, when I forget my password, it's going to cost my company about $1 per minute. Okay? And it's not like when I forget the password, I reset it like instantly and that's $1. No, in average, it's actually going to be $30. So when you have 1,000 users in your organization, $30, you just go ahead and do the math. It's a lot of money. The return on investment we can make in that 1,000 user organization per user per year is $637 based on this study. I'll give you all the articles later because it's super interesting reading. And then when you start reading Gartner, they estimate that between 20 and 50% of all calls to service desk are related to a password reset. Right? Which is which is why it's a little miracle. It has never happened to anyone in this room here, besides me. Then some scary things, because 64% of all users, they have written down their password at least once. I mean, probably know that, especially as a consultant. You go in, they have a strict password policy. You go like, there's no way I can memorize that. You write it down somewhere on your post-it block. And probably also happens for some of the ones who are hired in that company. A lot of us, 70%, do not use a unique password for each website. Again, if you attend some of the security sessions, I'm pretty sure they will tell you that once they have hacked your Facebook password, they will most likely also have access to your bank account and your Twitter account, your LinkedIn, and so on and so forth, because we are so extremely super lazy, some of us. And I mean, 25% we forget it on a regular basis. Most likely, after we return from 31 days on Ibiza and we have had a nice summer vacation, it's not like the password we really focused on during those days. And this is the scary one. And those of you who are consultants in here, you can verify this. A third will happily share their password. So I see that all the time. I can go in and can say, you know what, I'm waiting for accounting to create my external account. We have to wait 2 days. And they'll go, use mine. Okay, cool. I'll do that. I do not know if they actually go ahead and reset their password after they have given the password to me. I don't think so. So one of the features in here that is can pay for the entire project almost is actually the password reset feature. So again, if I go into configure, we can have, when we configure Azure Active Directory Connect, we can configure it so it has password write back. So if I go in a cloud service, my phone or whatever, and reset my password, it will actually write it back to my on-prem environment. So when you go into configure in here, and you wait for the spinning circle, there you go. There you'll see here that I've enabled my users for password reset. You also see that I'm going to request an available authentication method in here. You can request several. I just requested one. So my Azure Active Directory Connect has to support that. There are a couple of things that you need to make sure is actually enabled and configured. But once you have that, then as a user here, if I go into my outlook.com/MDM hybrid, and this is my mailbox, by the way. It's not a ton of stuff happening in that. Gee. Let's just go in here then. So if I go in here, it can be any of the web services that I'm using. So normally I would figure this out when I go into my my mail here, but it's definitely not doing something. I can't access my account. So is it a personal account or is it a work or school account? It's a work or school account. So now I'm just being taken to the password reset. And one thing you'll notice here is it's branded. So that's kind of, it means something. Because otherwise I do not know if what I'm doing right now, is it the Krug, is it the, my Facebook account and stuff like that. And now all the fun can begin. Because now you can spend the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours trying to figure out what those letters actually mean. I know if you're under 20, it's easy. But I mean, this is like, seriously? It will, once you do this, it will just write the account, the password back, and you'll be able to trace this in your event viewer. So you'll be able to see everything. You'll also be able to see it in your reports. So, I mean, we can go in and run a report and see how many actually did this password reset here. Do any of you want to read loud to me what it says here? MJLVQS. MJLVQS. There's a good 50% that I got it right. There you go. So remember, I asked for an additional verification method. So again, can you go ahead and text my phone? And my phone number is, now you all have my phone number. I mean, you can call me, that's fine. I might not pick it up. So I'm just waiting for the text here, the verification code. Come on. This is a perfect place to ask a question. Still haven't received it. Try again. Could be, of course, there you go. So this is no different than working with ordinary devices where you just have to reboot them once in a while. You just have to try again. There you are. So now it's going to take me and it's going to prompt me for my new password. I will type a password that violates the password policy. So there you go. No can do. It's actually going to write this back to my on-prem domain control, so I'll be able to see it in there. And what do you think happens if I just go back in here and look at this kind of fun slide? What do you think will happen to all the service desk calls and so on if you start having a very restrict password and you force users to change it every 30 days? It has to be, you have a password history that remembers the last 6 or 12 passwords. Do you think it's going to increase or decrease the calls to service desk? So, I mean, if you want to do anything about security, you need to have some kind of solution like this. Okay. So let's see if I can... I think I fat-fingered that. So while that one is gee. This is where I wish I hadn't tested this like, 20 times. So I've used all the passwords that I usually use. So password with capital P, password with, holy. Gee, I've used all my passwords. What month do we have? Oh. This one I know I haven't used. This is why I asked for an hour. My presentation here is, okay, something is wrong because I have these passwords here. I have not used them before. Going to give it one last time. So while that one comes back and tells me, hey, you did something wrong, let's just go in here and have a look. So here you can see my password resets, and you can see here that this is the one that I did a little earlier, where I actually remembered the password. And if I just refresh this one here, you'll see here I get a lot of password reset service, we didn't apply, we didn't follow the rules, and so on and so forth. So it's going to write all of this. It's going to give me all the reports in here. And I just, for the record, tried 7 different passwords there, and I can guarantee you I've not tested all, or not used all of them here. So that was kind of interesting. Okay, so the next we want to have a quick look at in here is the software as a service. This is typically where I see customers not being ready yet. I mean, they are ready to do the MFA, they're ready to do the password reset, they're ready to do the Intune enrollment, and so on and so forth. But this is where we want to go there, but we are not there yet. When we do software as a service, it's kind of interesting to know what happens behind the scenes, and I will show you how we create an app and so on and so forth. So when I go into my apps and I have a look at my apps, and there is like the famous Twitter app in there, I'm already validated, so I already have a token. So what I will do is when I want to access Twitter here is I authenticate to Azure, and as part of that logon process, I will have some information that I will actually cache locally. That PRT record here, if it's the first time you hear about a PRT record, you can kind of, it's kind of the same as a Kerberos ticket in your on-premise environment. So this is my ticket. I will give that one to my to Azure Active Directory again when I want to access Twitter. So I will say, well, here is my my refresh token. Can I please have a single sign-on for Twitter? And they will say, yeah, please, here you go. And all of this magic here, you can actually track that. If you go into your browsers, you can actually see that you're being redirected in there. So that's kind of what is happening behind the scenes. It's more or less the same as your Kerberos ticket and your Kerberos granting ticket. It's kind of the same game that goes on in there. Let's just have a quick look at that one. So the first thing I really want to do in here is I just want to create a group, because I am super lazy. If I can have my colleagues do the work that I usually do, I'm happy. I'm fine. So I'm going to add a group. I'm going to add my my Twitter group in here. So we are going to have access to the corporate Twitter account. When I have my my Twitter group, I will add a member. So I will add in Kenny here. I'll also at the same time add in an owner, and it's not going to be me. It's going to be Kenny as well. So now Kenny owns that group. And Kenny might just, be a regular user, but he owns that service, right? When Kenny logs in, so we have Kenny at MDM Hybrid. And he goes to groups. You can see here that Kenny can see his Twitter group, and he can go in and manipulate with this group. So I can go in here and say, well, I want to edit the group, I want to add members, or who can actually add members to this group here? Well, this group here requires, let's say it requires owner approval, and then I can update that one. So now I'm the owner, or Kenny is the owner. I've just said, well, I just need to approve it, and then you can go in and request that. If I log in here as myapps.microsoft.com, I log in as Tim. When I look at groups here, I don't have any, but I can go in and I can list all the groups, and then I can say Twitter. That's me. I wanna join the group here. And I will use the magic word, please. So now I'm sending a request. There you go. So that request, when I log, now I'm back in as Kenny, might be a little confusing. But in here you'll see I'll actually be loading the request, so I can go in and say, well, Tim, that's fine, I'll approve you. And there you go. So when Tim gets back and everything is kind of loaded again, Tim will be able to see the group. This is still Kenny. And in here we have Tim. So once this one here is updated, he will just be able to see the group. So why we don't want to watch that, we're going to come back to this one here. So back in my Azure AD, the reason why I really want to create a group is because I want to assign a couple of applications to the members of that group. So I want to go into my apps, and in my apps in here, I'm going to add in a SaaS application. We can build our own applications. We can have a connector in here. I can add an application from the gallery. And adding an application from the gallery is often where you want to start when you're doing a POC like this. And if you do not know what apps you're using in your environment, there is a little feature, I wrote a blog post on that, where you can actually figure out how many SaaS applications you have today, who's using those SaaS applications, and if they're managed or not. So I have Twitter. Here we go. That's the one I want to configure. I'm going to configure single sign-on, so I'll just have a password single sign-on. This experience here is different because it depends on what application you're using. So here we just have a password single sign-on. I'm going to enter the credentials. And then I'm going to assign the accounts. So somewhere in here, I have my Twitter group. I'm going to assign this one. And I want to enter the Twitter credentials here. So please all just, close your eyes. Never watch the recording. The thing is, I just entered the password for my own personal Twitter account. I don't care about my password maybe if this is the corporate account. So what I can do is I can say, well, I want to enable automatic password rollover. So Azure AD will change the password. I won't know it any longer. None of my colleagues would know it any longer. So we have to, if we want to, get the password back again, then we have to go through the normal Twitter password reset feature. So that can be kind of cool. So there you go. I have assigned a SaaS application. I have configured Twitter, and in here we are in as Kenny. Oh, didn't I approve that? So when I go in as Kenny here, and wait a few seconds, there you go. Now I have access to Twitter. This is not going to install while I'm in private mode. We can test it just so you can see, but you can see here once you're in incognito mode, it won't install. So let me just, start it up. So I'm going in as Kenny again. So you can see it's redirecting to Twitter. I'm not touching anything, and there you go. So even though some of you might have seen this with Twitter before, because Twitter is kind of a neat way to demonstrate this, this has a huge impact. I mean, there are probably a good 4 or 5 people in your organization who have access to your social medias, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Do you want them to have their own personal accounts? Or do you want them to have one account and then share the password? That's just a very dumb idea. So, I mean, just starting with applications like that, that's a pretty neat way to get started here working with your SaaS apps. We're quickly running out of time for the first one here. So that was software as a service, Azure Rights Management, because we're running out of time here, but I have a second session, so I'll just go ahead and demonstrate the Azure Rights Management in the second session here, so I don't steal your break. So the second session is going to be about Azure Rights Management. Now it is. And then it's going to focus much more on mobile device management, the hybrid scenario, all the cool stuff we can do in there, compliance items, conditional access, and all the stuff that you normally think about when you think about a mobile device management solution and EMS. But for now, just to honor the break here, what's next? There are a book and a half out on the Enterprise Mobility Suite. The one here on my left side I think it was released today, but it is you can download it as a Kindle edition. This is the second edition. It's written by some of the guys at Microsoft. It's really good. I haven't read it, but I read the first one. That was really good. And the second book I have here is not out yet, but that's the book that I wrote. So it will hopefully be out within a couple of weeks. And it will take you through, both of these books here will take you through setting up a POC, getting started correctly, and hopefully make you successful in your project. That's it. Thanks for attending the first one.